in British society and the conciliations with their past, Islamic identity, faith, and heritage, which they implore in their attempt to survive the unknown and embrace it. The first novel, Minaret, presents us with a female character who chooses to resist her racist surroundings through reconciling with her Sudanese Muslim identity. As we notice that most of the characters Abu Layla reflects on in her works are of a Sudanese Muslim identity. Even though her works can be seen as very diasporic in dimension. Um, in this novel, with her Muslim hijab and downturned gaze, Najwa is visible to many, especially to the rich families whose houses she cleans in London. So, who is Najwa in the novel? The novel speaks of Najwa, who flees her war-torn Sudan. She was the daughter of a very rich politician who was assassinated in the coup d'etat, and then Najwa was obliged to flee Sudan with her own family. With her who flees her torn Sudan with her family after the execution of her father during the Sudanese Civil War to find refuge in London. Leaving behind a life of financial comfort, she embarks on a journey of self-discovery as the new economic challenges in her new homeland seem to be far from assuring. So Minarat speaks of, quote, the pressures class and race exert on Najwa and her brother and other people she finds in the streets of London, especially in those actually unsure of their present place and future direction in a world increasingly intolerant of anyone outside the ever narrow mainstream, especially in British society. So when she was in the Sudan, she was a simple university student, aspiring just to finish her university career and start a family, not very kind of overthinking her future, not very well attached to her faith, as Abu Layla described her. She was in a way faithless. She did not give importance to her Islamic faith. She was not just really a practicing girl. But when she moves to London and when she engages with some of the Muslim girls found in the streets and the mosques, she starts step by step moving towards trying to understand her faith, she is originally. She puts on the scarf and she embarks on a journey to understand the importance of of faith in her life as a Sudanese woman. So, to Western society, where bare flesh is allowed, if not encouraged, the modest attire of Muslim women, like that put on by Najwa, has begun to be seen as somehow offensive. In this novel, Abu Layla argues against this unfair and socially determined position by detailing the emotional growth of a Muslim woman, Najwa. And Abu Layla herself kind of faces this, that she was not kind of put in scarf at the very beginning when she was a student at the University of Khartoum, and then when she moves to the West, she kind of starts witnessing all of those challenges experienced by women putting on the scarf. And when she puts the scarf herself, she kind of used her literary works and space to reflect on those very intimate, particular experiences of female African Muslim female migrants in the West. In the 70s, she lived in Sudan, a faithless daughter of a powerful politician. But her life changes when her father is killed in a coup and she is forced into exile. In London, Najwa feels rootless and alone, her emergent identity stunted by the sudden exile. To her surprise, however, she is drawn towards Islam, finding strength in other women, Muslim women, and an identity in their dress and in their manners. So, faced with all of these challenges, and previously thinking of herself as a well-to-do young woman who does not need to belong anywhere, with much potential to start a married life, she is now faced with the trials of securing her own life and that of her dependents. Not very well attached to her Muslim identity back in the Sudan, faith and reconciling with her true Muslim identity are now her way to salvation. So Najwa resists her xenophobic and Islamophobic leanings of her workers through holding on to her faith. The second example is taken from The Kindness of Enemies, where Natasha, who is born to a Russian father and Sudanese mother of a Muslim heritage, feels that she is a failed hybrid made up of unalloyed selves. So, in The Kindness of Enemies, Abu Layla speaks of the journey of Natasha, who is a Muslim, Russian, Sudanese history professor at the Scottish University. As you see, that many of the characters are taken from the particular context where Abu Layla herself lived and communicated with many women. A history professor at Scottish University, towards understanding her Muslim heritage, from which she was estranged for a very long time after long years of estrangement. So in this story is a provocative, a kind of telling of a period in history and an important examination of what it is to be a Muslim in a post 9/11 world. The focus of Natasha's story teaching and research is the personal life of Imam Shamil. And Imam Shamil was the leader of the Caucasian resistance to Russian invasion of Dagestan and Chechnya in the 19th century story. So as we read the novel, we could see that Abu Lila travels back into the to the history of Russia in the 19th century, the Muslims of Chechnya, and how they resisted Russian invasions. She inspires from there. She takes the story of Imam Shamil and kind of makes it the subject of the teaching of Natasha in the novel. And through the journey of Imam Shamil himself, Natasha moves step by step into discovering her own origins and heritage, even though it's very complicated. And that's why she calls herself as a failed hybrid made up of unalloyed selves. Why? Because she lives in Aberdeen, she teaches in Aberdeen in Scotland, but she is of a Russian and Sudanese heritage. She never lived in either the Sudan or in Russia. That's why she feels that she is hybrid and unalloyed. As we say that the focus of Natasha's teaching and research is the
Ma'am,
personal
kindly
life of
conclude.
Imam Shamil. Yes?
Ma'am, kindly conclude. We have a time limitation.
Okay, life of Imam Shamil, who was leader of the Caucasian resistance to Russian invasions of Dagestan and Chechnya in the 19th century. So, alternating between her struggles and experiences in the present and the Imam's life and his sacrifices in the 19th century, Natasha's journey towards understanding the Imam's life becomes her own journey of self discovery. Far away from home and feeling alienated in Scotland, Natasha describes herself as a failed hybrid made up of unalloyed selves. Natasha, however, plows through the Muslim past of both her countries of origin to finally settle with the conviction that reconciling with her Caucasian past without circumventing her present identity is her pathway to overcome her estrangement and resist the stereotypes associated with her double heritage. So, just very briefly, what we take not just from these two novels, but many other novels where Abu Layla speaks of the complexities of being a Muslim female migrant in the US, is that most of her characters would not shake off their faith. So the struggles of Abu Layla's female characters can be seen to be reflective of the vulnerability of Muslim women
I think there is some network issue. So we are introducing our next presenter, who is Professor Aditi Sarkar. Professor Aditi Sarkar.
Mr. Sajid, please announce the timing, like to the presenter, so that they are being known that in which how much time they have to
Ma'am,
wrap
we
up.
have decided that one presenter will take 10 minutes in this session.
Okay, okay,
Okay,
perfect.
so our next presenter is Professor Aditi Sarkar. Aditi is not here, so the next presenter is Dr. Shoaib Ahmed. Shoaib is not there in the meeting. Dr. Arshi Khan.
Hi, everyone. I'm sorry. I don't know why I was moved out of the room and I'm back here. I finished my presentation. Thank you so much for your attention. I will be very happy to respond to any questions or comments you may have. Thank you.
Thank you,
Thank you,
Ms.
ma'am.
Khadija. We'll take the question answers in the end.
Okay, thank you.
Moving over to the next presenters. Over to you, Sajid.
Uh, Dr. Shoaib Ahmed, he's not here. Dr. Archie is not here. Shiva Upadhyay.
Yes, I am here.
Okay. Shiva, kindly present your presentation.
Very good morning, everyone. Myself, Shiva Upadhyay. I'm a PhD research scholar at the Central University of Rajasthan, and my topic is a study of Islamic feminist perspectives in fiction with reference to Raja Al Sania's Girls of Fear. My paper examines the overlap of Islamic feminist literary criticism with Girls of Riyadh. So it's a novel which examines the ambitions, challenges, and identities of four young Saudi women in a confining patriarchal and religious system. Rajal Sania's Girls of Riyadh revolves around four young Saudi women named Lemis, Mitchell, Gamra, and Sadim, who try to balance conflicting demands of love, a conservative society, and the self. Composed in the format of a series of emails, the novel grants unprecedented access to women's private spheres, thoughts, thereby contesting the public and private spheres, a central glitch of Saudi cultural practice. The advocacy of Islamic feminism centers on the premise that the Quran and Hadith allow for the advocacy of gender equity. Most importantly, the Quran recognizes the equal spiritual worth of all individuals, saying created from one soul, and equal partners on all levels, including moral and spiritual. In Surah Al-Baqarah 2:187, Quran speaks of independence where men and women are clothing for you and you are clothing for them. Further, men and women are equally rewarded for being God as per Surah Al-Ahzab 33:35. So taken together, these passages support Islamic feminism assertion that equity on all levels is a tenet of the Islamic faith. So within the framework of Islamic feminism, the concept of dignity, karama, is of utmost value. In fact, the Islamic focus on a women's dignity is the basis of many arguments for gender justice. Numerous Islamic feminists propose that a society in which violence, discrimination, and exploitation are tolerated in a society in which a woman's dignity is not upheld. Furthermore, the core of Islam is the protection of every individual's dignity, which is why Muslim women are entitled to live in full the justice and dignity that Islam has to offer. The conviction is by Islamic feminists advocate for need to legislate and implement practices that have protective provisions for women and offer protection against domestic violence, sexual harassment, and various other forms of abuse. Islamic feminism also incorporates critiques of Western feminists who perceive Muslim women as passive victims who need savings. Western feminism, particularly as applied to MENA region, suggested that Islam and patriarchal structures entrap Muslim women and requiring unburdening. So Alsania's Girls of Riyadh use emails to narrate and examine the protagonist's intimate emotions and personal lives. The choice of format warrants attention, particularly because of Saudi culture context where public discourse and narrative about personal relations, intimacy, love, and women are highly regulated. So this form captures the episodic unfolding of the protagonist lives during a disagerated interval comprised of episodes of love, social obligation, and personal growth. And Alsanian designed the echoes, the character's emotional and psychological migration. The individually limited experience series of independent designs were intended to communicate the unique burdens each woman carries. The reality of distance can be communication, absence, shutting down, or deep emotional truths. But for Saudi Arabia, silence can signify absence of reality, especially for women. And women's voices are erased, abstracted for silence, except for the intimate sphere of family. At correspondence, characters can be digital and all. So if we talk about character analysis like agency and resistance in Gulf of Riyadh, Al-Thaniya also indicates the women in Saudi context are seen through the most closed and incorrect lenses. Agency and resistance, specifically the conflict between individualism and societal demands, form the basis of the complex understanding of the protagonist narratives. Lemis, Mitchell, Gumra, and Sadim all suggest that women in Saudi society are certainly not oppressed or passive in the capacity that some suggest. Each character illustrates that there are inequitable societal norms and considerable discrimination that women in Saudi Arabia must contend with. So, if we talk about Lemmings, so tension between professional aspiration and societal expectation. Lemmy embodies the struggle between honor, the goals Lemmy set for herself, and the goals that her society prescribed her. Lemmy is studying to be a physician and aspires to be integrated into the community health system and eventually into the national health system. Lemmy is pursuing goals that profound contrary to the expectations of women her age in Saudi Arabia. Instead of aspiring to a career, the society that surrounds Lemmy expects her to maintain within her home. That means entry into the field of healthcare, and particularly the field of medicine, is for the first time a constructive defiance of Saudi women's expected social passivity, and more significantly, the unrelenting expectation women to operate primarily within the confines of their homes. Our next character is Mitchell. For the second protagonist, Mitchell, the narrative around self-determination and the self-assertion becomes complex due to the intertwining of different cultural fabrics. Mitchell comes from a family with two diverse cultural heritages mismatched with two different worldviews. One side is influenced by the modern conservative Saudi Arab blood, and on the other is the liberalism of a Western educated mother. This family dynamic with two worlds on either sides does offer a certain range of freedom to Mitchell through the cultural and religious imposition. And on the other side of the family, there is a considerable complexity and tension on her integration within the cultural, religious, and familiar aspects. While in Saudi Arabia, Mitchell learns how to live with a layered culture in a complex society as she tries to engage with the different facets of her complicated life. Mitchell tries to satisfy the demands of integration within family responsibilities and the order of arranged marriages. Mitchell craves the Western world with all its love, geography, and the individuality of partnership choice, where she enjoys the individuality of a choice. Our third character is Gamra. Gamra's account highlights the ramifications of unrestricted and unregulated control on Saudi Arabian women. Arranged marriages and the expectations that follow are still commonplace in Saudi Arabian culture. Here, Gamra's demonstrates the harm and extent emotionally and psychologically injurious that oversight of marriages arrangements cause in Saudi Arabian context. In Gamra's unfortunate case, the imposed marriage primarily didn't work. Her case captured the stark realities of the control Saudi women lack over life defining choice. Each other's social context demonstrates the emotional and mental toll of social systems and the control that is exercised over bodies and lives within systems. So, most problematic within the repressive system of control in people like Gumra, the unanticipated and definitely positively split is remarkable. Our last character is Sadim. Sadim deals with the issues of love and loss and the complexity and commodification of women's emotion. Women endure emotionally and romantically painful losses that body. A story of emotional abuse. Sadim experiences challenges and disseminates the patriarchal assumption that all of women's emotion can and should be regulated. The loss and love as well as emotional struggles Sadim deals with must deal with the first and foremost on their personal tragedy. It is recorded in her case. Emotional loss is the large societal expectation from the unreciprocated love of a close friend. The Sadim case reflects the weight of emotional loss women on the hidden societal expectation that women bear all the emotional unspent. If we talk about themes like in Gulls of Riyadh, each of four narratives centers on the female protagonist. Al-Sania's characters are under the burden of cultural, socio-economic, and political context of a predominantly conservative, patriarchal, and hostile environment. Al-Sania's protagonists are challenged by the intricacies of love and amalgamation of desire, while grappling with the issue of personal dissatisfaction. Al-Thaniya intricately and critically engages the social feminist discourse of the patriarchal social orders, the tension and reclaiming factors of female sexuality, modernities, and traditional deadlock, and the essence of feminist social sisterhood. Each of those elements articulates the more conservative and meaningful discourse on Islamic feminism, which aims to have a rational contemporary articulation of several Islamic principles that promotes cultural reclamation around the autonomy of women in society. If we talk about negotiation and modernity and tradition, so in Gulls of Riyadh, the characters find themselves balancing the challenges of modernity and tradition. The characters have to deal on a personal level the issue of modernity as it contrasts with the more traditional societal practice and norm. Saudi Arabia and indeed several other conservative societies are faced with challenges of modernity in all its forms. Globalization and technological changes challenge the more culturally and religiously entrenched practices of society. The protagonists in the novel point to the aspirations, societal and family.
Yeah.
Uh, should I stop?
Yes, kindly conclude. Shiva, kindly conclude.
Okay, just give me 1 minute. I'm just so, in her novel, Alsani is able to provide a nuanced depiction of women's lives in Saudi Arabia. Through the various challenges it examines, such as love, the stifling Saudi context, and the clash of personal ambitions and societal frameworks. It pertains to Saudi Islamic feminism and the relevance of such a narrative in the discourse on gender, religion, and social context in the Arab world is undeniable. This is her reclamation of narrative and sexuality. This reclamation is directed toward the sense of conservative in contemporary Saudi Arabia. Actually, it is a fusion of modernity and postmodernity. Thank you very much, everyone.
Thank you, Shiva. So our next presenter is Dr. Arshi Khan.
Hi, good morning, everyone. Am I audible? Can you hear
Yeah,
me?
you are audible. Yes.
All right. So, very good morning, everyone. My topic for today's presentation is illuminating the lamp within an Islamic feminist discourse on Banu Mushtaq's heart lamp. As we all know that recently Banu Mushtaq has won the Booker Prize for her book, for this prestigious story collection that is Heart Lamp, in which she has been, she has portrayed the lower class Muslim background families, the women who do not hold good education, who are not coming from a very good or a sound socially and economically well off families. So the predicament of women in such scenario, the problems, the oppressions, the things, the concerns, the unawareness that that comes to them because of not being educated or being politically or socially or economically sound. Okay, and what has Islamic feminism to do with this, with the stories that I'm going to depict? So let me first begin. I've written a complete paper, but I'll just cut short a few important points that I need to mention here. So, first is the introduction to Islamic feminism, its origin and historical context. So, first of all, we need to know, we all know what feminism is. We know about the feminist rights, the things that women should be doing for themselves, the right that we have, the responsibilities that we hold, and how female females or women are also an integral part of society, in the central of society, just like men. Islamic feminism comes out of the notion, it has emerged as an intellectual and socio religious movement that sought to reinterpret Islamic text through a gender just lens. Like, what does Islam say of its women? What are the rights that have been bestowed upon our women by our religion? So, rooted in the Quranic principles of equality, justice, and compassion, Islamic feminism challenges the patriarchal readings of Islam that have historically marginalized women. We've gotten to know, we've always heard of sayings like women in Islam need to cover themselves, they need to veil themselves, they are right more to men than women. Women are often suppressed and oppressed in the name of religion. So is that reality? Is that really the core reality of a religion? No, it's not. That's what the interpretation of Islam, that's what the feminist interpretation of Islam has brought about to us. Okay, its rise can be traced to the late 20th century, particularly during the post colonial and global feminist waves, when Muslim women scholars and activists began reclaiming religious narratives that had long been monopolized by male interpreters. There are various writers like Fatima Mersini, Amina Wadood, Leila Ahmad, and Asma Barlas who argued that Islam, in its original revelation, upholds spiritual and social equality between men and women. So while Islam has given social, economic, educational, all forms of right to women, the current predicament of Muslim women in South Asian society for years has been terrible, and still we are in terms of negotiation, and we have not reclaimed our complete emancipation. Talking about this, the condition of Muslim women in South Asian society remains a complex intersection of religion, culture, and socio-political reality. We all know about cultural studies. We all have studied cultural studies, and we know how politics, how religion, how the society that we are living in impact the actual and day-to-day living of people. Similarly, it has affected our women too. Despite the egalitarian essence of Islam, which grants women rights to education, inheritance, and social participation, the lived experience of many Muslim women continues to be shaped by patriarchal interpretations of faith and deeply entrenched cultural norms. In countries like India, Pakistan, Bangladesh, and Afghanistan, Muslim women often navigate a double marginalization. First, within their own religious communities, where conservative structures often restrict their agency, and second, within broader socio-political contexts that stereotype and otherize them. Access to education, healthcare, and employment remains uneven for our women, while there are issues like triple talaq, polygamy, parda system, no or least education for women, or the prioritizing of male child over the female child, and limited mobility are frequently debated issues. Now, I would like to take you directly to the stories of Banu Mushtaq, as in how she has depicted the plight of these women. The novel, the short story collection Banu Mushtaq's Heart Lamb, it is an evocative collection of short stories that sheds light on the muted anguish and resilience of Muslim women living within rigid patriarchal frameworks. Each story unfolds like a whispered confession, illuminating the everyday struggles, social and
তাহলে কি এখন করিয়ে দেবে? তা নাহলে ক্লাস নেওয়াটা ঠিক
Dr. Pinky,
mute
kindly
yourself.
mute yourself. Kindly mute yourself.
Dr. Pinky, please mute yourself. Dr. Pinky. ঠিক আছে।
there's some confusion.
Yeah. It's okay now. Rest of the participants, please mute yourself. Dr. Arshi is presenting.
All right, thank you so much. Okay, so each story is unfolding like it's like a whispered confession, the things that are actually happening in our society. Many a times these things do happen before us. We see the cases of triple talaq, we see the cases of extramarital affair in our society, yet the family knowing everything, being aware of everything, witnessing everything, they hushed their girls off, they hushed their children off, not to speak about it, not to speak of the infidelity, not to speak about the extramarital affairs, not to talk about the lack of education, even if the family is well off, even if the family can afford a good living condition and good education for their girls, people do not provide them to girls. Just to keep them intact, just to keep them oppressed, so that when a woman talks, the world changes. They don't want, the patriarchy doesn't want the world to change. So these are some hushed voices, these are some whispered voices that come to the reader, that we get to know, that we get acquainted to in a very subtle way of storytelling that Banu Mushtaq has done. So there are certain issues that we're going to talk about in this short story collection. For example, let me first talk about the essence of true Islamic feminism versus patriarchal distortion. While the stories of Mushtaq brings forth the hard-hitting realities of Muslim women's lives being exploited by the patriarchy under the name of Sharai Haq provided to men, weaponing it
Dr.
up
Archie,
against.
kindly conclude.
Is it getting too long?
Yeah, kindly
Yeah,
conclude.
I 2 more minutes. Okay. Let me just wind this section up. Okay. So, for the hard hitting realities of Muslim women's life being exploited by patriarchy under the name of Sharia Haq provided to men, weaponing it up against the Muslim women, the actual Islamic rights of women are absolute contrast to what is the practiced culture. Let's first talk about the spirit of polygamy in India. The Quran permits polygamy in Surah Al Nisa, stating that a man may marry up to 4 women only if he can deal with them justly. However, the same verse immediately cautions that such justice is nearly impossible to achieve, implying monogamy as the ethical norm. Next, the misuse of triple talaq. The immediate spelling out of talaq 3 times has never been an Islamic practice, but the followers of uh, certain sections which are unaware, or they just want to impose their version of Islam, have been misusing the concept of triple talaq. Secondly, next, the final thing is the education for women in Islam is a divine mandate and it's not a privilege. Education in Islam is not merely a right but a sacred duty. I would like to come directly to one of the very important points that have been mentioned in this work, that is the obligation of childbearing and motherhood in Islam, which has always been considered for a mother, for a woman, it has always been considered that women are obligated to bear children, it's their duty. However, is in Islamic thought, motherhood holds a place of immense reverence, but it's not an obligation. There's always an option for women whether she wants to take up this privilege or not. A very small section of the story I'd like to quote. The opening story of Banu Mushtaq's Heart Lamp, which is titled Slab Stones for Shaista Mahal, which is a heart-wrenching narrative that captures the silent suffering of countless Muslim women who internalized childbearing as a religious obligation. Shaista's husband professes deep love and reverence for her, idolizing her as his Mumtaz Mahal, the Mughal queen immortalized in stone by Shah Jahan. However, when Shaista dies during the birth of her 11th child, the next moment, just after 40 days, her husband goes and marries the next woman, making us spellbound, making us grief struck, making us think of the thoughts of the claims of love and respect that men claim towards women, but when it comes to showcasing, when it comes to actually living it, they fail. So that is how Banu Mushtaq has come up with these stories. I'd like to conclude that Heartland stands as a powerful testament to the lived realities of Muslim women struggling within the entangled web of faith, patriarchy, and social conditioning. Through her deeply emotional and transient narratives, Mushtaq illuminates the silent corners of domestic spaces where women's pain, sacrifice, and endurance are sanctified as virtues. And it is only through education, it is only through realization of self-worth, it is only through empowering and enlightening the lamp within each woman's heart, then women can get out of the shackles of patriarchy and following the true essence of Islamic feminism. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Arshi Khan. Our next presenter is Dia Fatima P.
Hello.
Hello, Dia. Yeah, you are audible.
Okay. Hi, hello. Good morning, everybody. I'm Dia Fatima, the scholar of Albatul's Women's College. I'm from Kerala. It's truly a honor to stand before you all. Today, my presentation is conducted on the topic the contemporary reflection on Islamic jurisprudence, gender, and the family in transition. The modern ideologies and the Western concept are blindly considered as a civilized innovations. Individualism is also among them. The world became too individual-centered, ignoring the fact that humans are social beings. Gender became more relevant issue in these modern times. These ideologies put a drastic impact on Muslim community like others. In Islam, women and men are coexisting social beings instead of isolated single human. Both gender have an equal and value in front of a creator, but Islam gives different rights and duties for them, considering healthy and social being and a variety of biological diversity. The reality is, women are not deemed as important as men in Muslim majority or minority communities. Because of this problem, world would judge the teaching of Islam as anti-women. This is a misunderstanding due to the cultural norms. Therefore, Islamic feminists acts like the rereading of the Holy Quran or the Sharia laws change the scenario. But a deep study needed on this innovation concept, whether it's led to a wrong way, and record of understanding thus feminist reading misleading our Muslim sisters. Through this presentation, I like to focus on some vital themes, Qawama, Fadala, Daraja, Nushuz. And also my topic is also connected with the family reforms. So I like to introduce you all about the Fadala, Kiwama. The human beings are the control of any form of the authority. It is impossible to lead a healthy life without an effective authority, especially in the modern competitive share society. The Prophet ﷺ ordered to give leadership to one person, three people of the growth tower. So the superiority in the family is the main concern the feminists talk about the Islam or the reading of the Quran. It's an important to have a authority in every social institution for sustainability to a leadership and the authority. Every person can live in this world or this society with the authority or the responsibility under anyone. The family is a unit of a society and it is a universal. There is also need and authority. Almighty Allah says in the Quran, men are in the charge of Allah by what Allah has given on over the others and what they spend for their wealth, from their wealth. It's also said in the Surah Nisar, a man's on the charge of woman on two conditions, that preference and spending of the property for supporting the woman. But the feminists argue that Islam not to give chance or the preference to women in Islam. The preference will be discussed in the next chapters. So this is authority kindly of a responsibility of man, which applied on the authority kind of a responsibility of man, which applied on the family relationships. If either one of the condition fails, then there is no authority for the man. Childbearing ability goes only to women. Primarily, she has the responsibility of childbearing, which demand a great deal of physical strength, stamina, intelligence, and the personal commitments. Men have a responsibility to give the food, dress, and the shelter for the wife as long as she let have a sexual relationship with her. And if she feeds the child, then he has obligated to take care of her, and then he has authority over her too. It's not a absolute power, but is a limiter with God's commands. Feminists are considered childbearing is not women's exclusive functions. It is true that there is no term on the Quran which states mothering is a primary role of a woman, but only women can bear a child than a man. It is important for the woman it's embodying continually human existence, and the Prophet ﷺ promoting to very woman, married woman have ability to bearing child. And it does not matter if a woman can bear as a human or genes are created for the worship God. But this is a kind of the feminist reading mentally effective Muslim sisters that having children is an unvalued function, or bearing children at a young age is a feel like a taboo. Wadud mentioned in his work that Kiwama is a neither biological or inherited, but it's valued. In fact, Quran clearly and Islam clearly gives Kiwama gave a man is with the two conditions, and she mentioned that does a woman deserve the Kiwama even they live in the capitalist society where needed more than a single income to lead a comfortable life? In the Sharia law, men are responsible to take care of his family as a childbearing is a never goes to man, even it's super hard to sometimes causes of the for death. A woman can have her own economic or income, support for husbands, her own favor. The leadership in a society is a privilege, not a privilege in Islam. It's a responsibility, which will be a question leadership requires qualifications or like biology, psychology, education, experience, finance, etc. Men are best suited for to be a ruler. The scholar is forbidding women to ruler because of the hadith which is stated, never will succeed in such as a nation as makes everyone with the rulers. This provision do not be to be a practical consideration that, rather than the ability of being an absolute ruler. It's not mentioned a woman can be a rule a nation because the emotional stage of the or mental stage of the woman is very weak than the man. Man can't bear his emotional condition, and it's even every time he can't. And another thing is, I mentioned here the Fadl Daraja. Daraja, it can be earned or granted by Allah. It's individual or group or with other. Allah mentioned in the Quran that Daraja could be earned through the specific action. For the example, serving in way of Allah with one's wealth or the one's person or by the immigration from Allah. Daraja can be obtained by unspecified good deeds also. Allah mentioned in Quran, and for all are degrees from what they have done, and but but whoever comes to him as a believer having done righteous deed, for those will be highest degree in the position. Some was also shared about the Rajsa to some individuals whose specific qualities over others who haunts the will. For example, Allah will exalt those who believe among you or those who have knowledge to high ranks. The Raja that will given by Almighty Allah be trusted. He is who has placed you as a vicary of the earth as accessing some of the you in rank above others. That he may try to buy that which he have given you. One verses which distinguished are daraja between man and woman also mentioned in Quran. Uh, a woman who are divorced remain in the wage of the three periods. It's not lawful for them to conceal that Allah will create their wombs if they believe in Allah and the last days. Their husbands want to reconciliation and the right to the woman are similar to against them, and with the regarding of morals, and men are a degree above them. And also I mentioned here the fadalla, one of the main concept on this topic. Fadalla is another term which use it for preferred preference of Allah of someone's individuals or creation over others. Fadalla is only can give by Allah creation, not in it's like daraja. Allah stated in the term of several verses like humankind is preferred over rest of the creation, or some of the prophets are preferred over others prophets.
Dia,
All of
kindly
these.
conclude.
Okay, so okay, and also there is an issues. It's about the marriage concept. A woman also to make a stand for him, her in the marriage concept, and also feminist talks also in this concept. Islamic feminism and family is one of the main topic in my topic. So family as a blindly connected to our society. Through these all are connected to our Islam. Islam also say about this all a great consideration concrete in Islam for the woman. A woman and man are a creator of creator's blessing. Not Islam give a responsibility or authority to man than the woman. It's give a responsibility only for the man. I like you all. I like my understand my presentation here. I like to conclude. Thank you all.
Okay, thank you, Dia. We have a next presenter here, Rashmi Ranjan and Pratha Jyoti Roy. Next presenters, Pratha Jyoti Roy and Rashmi Ranjan.
Yes, ma'am. Am I audible?
Yes, you are audible.
All right. Very good morning to everyone present here. So the title of our paper will be The Intersection of Grassroots Activism and Muslim Women's Identities in Heartland, a Feminist Study. So starting with the introduction, emerging as a watershed movement in modern Indian literature, as we all know, Banu Mustaq's Heartland, translated by Deepa Bhasti into English, bringing global attention to the true, genuine lived experience of Muslim women in South India. It is also a part of the Kannada Bandaya Sahitya, or the rebel literature, as we say. The short story collection subverts the many stereotypes that present Muslim women as silenced or passive, and thus goes forward to win the International Booker Prize, highlighting the urgency of such triumphant representation. Now, through this paper, we try to investigate how Heartland restructures the feminist praxis excuse me, by examining the inner mechanism of the social foundation and also advocating for a quotidian defiance instead of a formal political maneuver. Now, with this paper, we tried to represent the post-colonial feminist and intersectional framework, drawing from Kimberly Cronshaw's concept of intersecting operations to analyze how multiple layers of identity markers amplify the gendered subjugation. Now, we have divided the paper into certain subtopics. The first subtopic is a silence as a form of resistance. So, Western feminist discourses like Spivak and the Subaltern Speak have typically symbolized voice as the primary source of women's agency, which they need to occupy to subvert the dominance out of their oppressive position that is signified by silence and depravity. But this binary reading falters to produce the understanding of significant usages of silence within the context where direct confrontation presents the vital risks. Now, through the short stories like Black Cobras, Stone Slaps for Shaista Mahal, and Fire Rain, Mushtaq depicts how women transform the silence into tactical withdrawal, emotional endurance, and also a survival strategy that undermine the very monolithic narrative of victimhood. Now, in the short story Black Cobra, we see a character Ashraf. Ashraf's journey from silence to voice is constituted by the arc of grassroots resistance abandoned by her husband Yaqub after bearing three daughters. Ashraf, at the inception of the story, internalizes her suffering as she sits wordlessly in the mosque compound with children for days while awaiting judgment from the Mutabali, that's the mosque authorities. Her silence during this stretch of time appears passive to external observers. Neighbors peek from being compound walls, men hurry past to their homes, dismissing her plight. Now, yet, her silence acts strategically against the authority on multiple levels. First, by occupying the sacred space without visible rebellion, Ashraf makes visible the contradictions between the Islamic jurisprudence, now which grants women the maintenance rights, and its selectivity as practiced by the male religious authorities. Now, secondly, Ashraf's silence overturns her from accusations of shamelessness that Yaqub hurls to her. You pop out an army of girls and roam around like a dog. Learn to have a little bit of decency at least. Now, this is a quote. In a community where a woman's reputation rests upon her modest behavior, vocal protest risks debunking her claims. Now, silence thus becomes what post-colonial feminists term as a tactical withdrawal method, a refusal to be part of the oppressive dialogue that could further suppress her voice. Now, when she finally breaks silence by petitioning the Mutawali, her prior resilience adds moral weightage to her demands, forcing the community to sympathize with her suffering. Now, in another short story, The Fire name, it discusses another dimension of projecting silence through the character called Arifa, whose whispers create a private form of challenge to the social sphere of recessive identity. Married to the Mutawali Usman, Arifa is the first person audience of his husband's denial of Islamic inheritance rights to his sister Jamila while lecturing about Sharia law. Arifa does not raise her voice in protest, but whispers her disagreement at night. She suggests to him, quotes, call your four sisters and give them what needs to be given, unquote. And when Usman dismisses her, you shut up and do your work. Arifa does not escalate. She continues her quiet agency, feeding Jamila's family well, and takes care of their well-being because she believes, Hakdar tarse to angar ka nu barse. If the one who has rights is displeased, a rain of fire will fall. Now, the second subtopic is the community networks and the intergenerational assistance. In Banu Mustaq's Heartland, the power of women's collective action is suggested underneath the social representation that is found within the transformative narrative of the different stories. Rather than subscribing to the idea of a lone heroine, Mustaq depicts the collective system and the informal networks as the means to survive everyday social spaces through hope, resistance, and solidarity. Such community support and intergenerational efforts become a counter narrative to the Western idea of individualism, projecting the Indian Muslim women's agency not through seclusion, but rather through planned entanglement within the social strata. In in the short story, High Heeled Shoe, the collective affection becomes a community ethic. When Arifa faces personal and public crisis, the local women come forward to support her through illness, maintaining her home, and thus they assert her right to dignity. The formation of informal network and connections like these are not established by any formal or official system. Rather, it is strengthened through the acts of generosity and the mutual resilience. Reliance, sharing food, tending the children, exchanging news, and lending money in secret. Now, it is through these practices that the characters build the grassroots feminist spaces. Mustar clearly captures this theme vehemently within the another story, Be a Woman Once, O Lord. Here, mother-daughter relationships are not presented as a hereditary line of control and authority, rather as an alliance for survival, where courage and caution become sides for negotiating status, faith, and selfhood. Now, the wisdom of grandmothers that is passed on through advice and mothers pass on to the daughters and become a part of what is known as cultural toolkits for survival. Through stories of suffering and practical instruction, Mustaq shows how knowledge about birth, family, honor, money, religious custom moves through generations, finding new forms in each retelling. The rest of the subtopics will be continued by my co-presenter.
Thank you, Partha. So moving on to the third point of discussion, that is politics of reproduction. The text delves into the contested subject matter of women's bodies within South Indian Muslim communities, examining how reproductive choices becomes a source for grassroots political activism, not remaining only within the domain of personal preference. As Sister Song Women of Color Reproductive Justice Collective defines, reproductive justice is what, quote unquote, the human right to maintain personal bodily autonomy, have children, not have children, and parent children in safe and sustainable communities. In the story Black Cobras, the character of Amina embodies reproductive resistance. After bearing 7 children in 10 years and experiencing physical exhaustion, Amina raises her voice in support of sterilization against her husband's religious objections. The Mutawali, her husband, dismisses her concern, maintaining how, quote unquote, if people get to know what I got the operation done for a woman in my own house, I will have to be answerable to them. As she leaves to undertake the sterilization operation despite community prohibition, she projects bodily resistance against patriarchal stranglehold over women's fertility. In contrast with Ashraf's demand for maintenance rights, Amina's quest for reproductive autonomy helps us identify how grassroots activism can take place simultaneously on multiple fronts within the same community. The title story, Heartland, provides a more mature instance of reproductive politics through Mehroon's struggle against polygamy structure. When her husband Karim secretly marries, Mehroon doesn't traverse only through betrayal but also through the reproductive implications, that is, her threatened position due to the second wife's childbearing potential within an already liminal position. Her attempts to save her marriage.
Partha and Rashmi, please conclude.
Yeah, just 2 minutes. Her attempts to save her marriage with consistent acts of domestic devotion highlights women's reproductive capacity and is linked with economic and social security. The last part of her paper, that is economic survival and Islamic jurisprudence, uh, Mustak's short stories propose both of these aspects, that is, religious identity and economic experience, through demand of inheritance rights, pursuit of maintenance from absent husbands, and search for regal recourse. In the story Fire Rain, Jamila's confrontation with her brother, the Mutawali Usman, underlines the interconnection between these two aspects. Even if she has been married into quote unquote a good family, Jamila brings her bodyguard like 6 foot tall husband. Uh, Her claim is clearly economic. She asks for her share of quote unquote mango groups, coconut groups, fields, places where they raised silk worms and resplendent houses. Nonetheless, Jamila foregrounds her demand through Islamic jurisprudence, arguing that, quote unquote, it says clearly in the Quran that a girl child has a right to her share. She further threatens legal action. Quote unquote, if you don't give me my legal share, I'll have to get it through the courts. This technical and secular mechanism, as utilized by Jamila, shows women's awareness of her reality and her rights. Concluding the paper, Banu Mustak's Heart Lamp is a silent advocacy of grassroots feminist activism that is evolving around the lived reality of South Indian Muslim women who are struck within the intersections of gender, religion, class, and patriarchal authority. This study is a revelation of how the author problematizes the already established mainstream feminist narrative by showing that silence can be utilized to bring transformation, economic activities can be political, and Islamic law itself becomes an instrument to resist and reclaim women's deserved rights from the patriarchal gatekeepers. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. We have our next presenter here, Professor Aditi Sarkar. Is Professor Aditi Sarkar?
She is not here.
Okay. Then we have Dr. Suaib Ahmed. He is also not here. So thank you everyone. Now we
Doctor
will move on to our Suaib
Dr. Shu
Ahmed.
Dr. Shoaib Ahmed has texted that he will be joining soon.
Okay.
Maybe if there are questions on these presenters, you can take them in the meanwhile.
Yes. While Mr. Dr. Shreeb joined, we can move over to the question answers to the presenters.
May I go? Because I posted a question here to Dr. Arshi.
Yes, this is the
Okay.
question to Dr. Arshi.
Thank you. So, Dr. Arshi, this question is for you. To what extent does understanding the true and untwisted message of Islam contribute to eliminating the lump within the protagonist of the novel and other women she represents? Does the novel allude to this? Because you were talking about grassroots activism in the novel and how contesting the patriarchal structures is one path in the struggle. But I want to understand whether understanding the untwisted message of Islam concerning women's position in society contribute to this eliminating the lump. And does the novel say anything about that? Thank you.
Arshi, are you there? Please respond.
I think Arshi is not in the meeting right now. Does anyone else want to respond to the question raised? I think it's anyone can respond.
Or maybe to the last presenters, because they worked also on, because I did not read the novel and I'm interested in understanding this side of it. The last presenters also worked on the same novel, I think.
And there is also a critique of this work by Muslim women themselves, who feel that there is a great reception in the West of literature which presents Muslim women as victims. So, yeah, so maybe those who are writing about Banu Mushtaq's work can respond to this.
I think we have many in the session who are actually working on Banu Mushtaq. So anyone can take up.
Because I could feel that there are some intersections between Mushtaq and Abu Layla, the Sudanese novelist I was talking about, because she also kind of concentrates on the importance of faith that comes from the inside. So it's similar here that the light is kind of needs to come from the inside. The importance or the strength of the faith leads to many other forms of activism, as if she tells us that without a strong attachment to one's identity, any kind of outside activism or engagement with women's issues will not kind of suffice in a way.
Very true. And I'm surprised why we did not have many abstracts on Salma, who is another important writer from India who writes in Tamil about Muslim women. And Salma's works, one after the other, they highlight the ill adjustment of Muslim women, feel with very religious structures of their community. And the point that is there in Salma's work is that men are as much victims of these structures as women. They are equally helpless. And very often when they victimize because of the pressures from the community and the expectations from them as Muslim male, to control their wives or sisters, that they victimize the women in their family. So it's yeah.
I just want to add one thing, that we actually received a lot of abstracts on Islamic perspective in fiction, and we have a parallel session running on. So there might be many papers in that other session. So that's why we had to divide it into two.
But I mean, Salma, no one is presenting on Salma, no?
I don't think so. But there were many on Banu Mushtaq
There are
in
many
the
on
other
Banu
in the
Mushtaq.
other session also.
Yeah, this is what market does actually. Yeah.
Yes, true.
Yes, and I think this is one of the underrepresented points in literary works, and that's why Abu Layla is praised, because she um, she's in a way different from all the other writers who try to concentrate on how women can be saved from the outside by their communities in a way, which means the need to belong is one way to save them, but she concentrates on what comes from the inside, the strength of one's kind of solid attachment to one's identity as one pathway to resist xenophobia or kind of the complications of life in the West. And I think this what makes her in a way similar to Banu. I don't really know the writer, but I could kind of create some sorts of intersections here.
I think that's the reason why Leila Abu Leila fits so well into our larger framework of Islamic feminist writing also, because as you said, and she's writing most of her novels are constituted in that diasporic settings, where the characters are moving. So that element of how Islam is represented and understood in the diasporic context, where it changes meanings a lot. So I think that's why, Abu Leila is studied a lot in that context. And Banu Mushtaq also, I can understand your curiosity in learning more about Banu Mushtaq. So maybe we can engage, at some other platform later on. But we need to also time the sessions. So where are the rapporteurs and the chair? Maybe we can just...
Yes, ma'am.
Presenters have presented.
If the next presenter is not there, you can wrap up.
He's here. He's here.
I'm here. I'm here.
Why were you late?
Ma'am, actually, there was some technical issue while joining this. Actually, the app was not working.
Chalo,
I don't
you're
know why.
present now.
So,
Right. Take
okay,
it.
ma'am. Okay. Uh, esteemed Professor Nisha Zaidi, ma'am, the director of the center, and esteemed Dr. Ambreen Jamali, ma'am, chairing this session. and all present here a very good morning. I am Suab Ahmed. The title of my paper is Muslim Women in Muslim Diaspora. The key terms that I have used in my paper are identity, Islam, gender, culture, migration. The primary texts that I have selected to develop the core contour of my paper are Brickland by Monica Ali, that published in 2003, Madras on Rainy Days, that by Samina Ali, published in 2004, Home Fire by Kamila Shamshi, that published in 2017. And the paper is divided into five parts. Number one, introduction. Number second, major research questions. Number third, research methodology. Number fourth, socio-literary representation of Muslim women in Muslim diasporic texts. And the last part is conclusion. So in introduction, it explores the history and politics of diaspora studies developed on Muslim women through the contemporary production of South Asian diasporic literature or the literary text. It briefly explores the social literary representation of Muslim women and Islam in diasporic fiction. So this is all about my introduction and the research questions that I have raised in the paper. Number one, how the narratives have been developed on the life of Muslim women, diaspora in host land. And the second research question is how Muslim women, diaspora, and Islam are seen by the native people in the foreign nations. And the third one is how their loyalties and faith, being Muslim and being diasporic women, how their loyalties and faith are always questioned in the foreign nations by the native or the host communities, how the aspects of difference in equality among the equals are reflected in the diasporic studies through the production of contemporary South Asian literature or literary studies. And the last research question that I've raised in the paper is how these select writers have developed the narratives on the dignity and equality for women and Islam in the discourses of diaspora. So I would read a brief, important part of my paper, and then I will summarize it within the given time. How have the socio-cultural paradigms of migration influenced the identity of Muslim women, diaspora in the foreign locations? How has the life of Muslim diasporic women been depicted in the literary narratives of Muslim diasporic women? How has the concept of assimilation and integration been portrayed in the select text? How have the sensibilities of Muslim diasporic women been narrated in the foreign territories? So these are some of the complex questions can arouse our critical sensibilities concerning the socio-literary representation of identity and migration of Muslim diasporic women in contemporary diasporic fiction. So the paper tries to project multifarious perspectives on immigrants about homeland and hostland. It explores how native look at Muslim minorities in adapted land, especially diasporic women. It's an attempt to investigate the aspects of alienation, nostalgia, sense of social exclusion, and the question of ethnicity of Muslim diasporic women in the multicultural world of foreign nations. It lays out the diasporic sensibilities of first and second generation of diasporic Muslim women through the literary narratives. It tries to look at the relationship between the natives and the diasporas in the contact zones. It aims to project the memories of the protagonists in an alienated land. It tries to trace the struggle, psyche, and conflicts of the inner self of Muslim diasporic women. It exposes the inequality among the equals, the natives and the immigrants who have become the citizen of the present locations, or difference in equality through the narrative of select text. So the text that I have selected lay out various socio-political and cultural issues of South Asian Muslim women concerning the aspects of cultural assimilation and integration with the culture of foreign nations. It explores how they face the issue of identity crisis, sense of otherness, dislocation, displacement, and alienation in terms of their religious identity, faith, and traditions. It tries to expose, it tries to expose the question of equality, the question of dignity among the equals on the basis of their Muslim religious identities, phonetics, and culture. It exposes how their loyalties and faith are seen with doubt by the people of host countries. And the paper adapts interdisciplinary research methodology to proliferate the core contour of the paper, since material has been taken from various disciplines from sociology, psychology, culture studies, and gender studies, politics, history, and literature. So it Uh, just 1 minute. Uh, So it examines the select works of the writers from culturally, regionally diverse in context. What brings them together is their engagement with the experience of being other as a Muslim women diaspora in the host land or in the host community. They write from the perspective of both. Uh, just a minute. And the first text is Brick Lane. In that, the principal character is Nazneen. So it explores, it examines the transforming identities of Muslim women through the character of Nazneen because she migrates from Bangladesh to Britain, and what happens with her and how she emerged as a new woman and how she encounters the major problems or the issue in the foreign nation and how she overcome all the problems and the challenge, and she becomes and she construct by deconstructing her native identities and how she reconstruct her new identities being the strong women in the contemporary time. So I would sum up my paper by highlighting the main argument that I developed in my paper. So these women characters or the Muslim women encounter many challenges and problems in the host communities. But the difference that I found and the research gap that I found and the aspect or the innovative aspect that I found, that all these women characters, apart from going through the challenges or the problems or the cultural, psychological, or emotional issues, and as they are looked or as they are seen other by the native people, though even though after going through all these experiences, these women characters have, and being Muslim women, have flourished themselves in a very good position. They have flourished, they have developed, and they have established themselves in a very very sound position. So this is what the thank you. Or I have a long paper. If I would read it, it will take time. So this is what about my paper. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Dr. Shoaib. Anyone have questions to him?
Kulsum, there are some questions in the chat. Do you want to take it right now, or we're doing it in the end?
Okay, ma'am, we have done with all the presenters. We can take the questions now. Sumbul Faria Ayubi have a question to Dia Fatima.
Dear Fatima, are you here?
Yeah, ma'am.
Okay, so this is a question to you.
Okay.
You have a question, Dia Fatima from Sumbul.
Kulsum, you may read the question.
Okay, ma'am. Okay, ma'am. The question is, in her book Quran and Women, Amina Wadood discusses the issue of female witnesses as mentioned in the Quran. Does she agree with the traditional interpretation of this verse? Moreover, how does she respond to arguments that portray women as less rational or more emotional, which are often used to justify the notion that the testimony of two women is equivalent to that of one man? Dia?
Okay, I need to time to think about that.
In the meanwhile, if anyone else has any question, you may please post it in the message chat box.
Dia Fatima, are you responding to the question?
Yeah, ma'am, I just clear the mindset question. Okay. And first of all, I just confess I'm the first time to present a presentation. I have some fears. Okay. She asked about the human or about the discussions and issues of human weaknesses mentioned in the Quran. The less women are less rational, more emotional. The psychological, it's confessed that women are less emotional to control. It's Amna would not describe about that. I think I mentioned in the um, Kaibama section.
Divya, don't mind, but like, have you read her book, Quran and Women? Because I
What?
have read. Have you read her book, Quran and Women? Reinterpreting the
Amina Wadud's Quran. What do you mean?
and Women. Yeah, that book.
Oh, Amina Wadud's book.
Yeah, that book is there, Quran and Women. That's the title of
Oh
that
no,
book.
I'm not read that. I just
Okay.
research from the presentation is written by my as
Because
a presentation.
I'm currently working on that and I have read that book and I am not agreeing with so many points which you have highlighted. So only I've asked you this question regarding witness because I really because when what you're saying, women as emotional and all, Wadud has counter all this argument in her book very well.
I say the psychologically says about that women are so emotionally down compared to men. Amna Wadud's concept I mentioned not here about the emotion. I mentioned I think independence is Fadallah, where I mentioned that one.
Dia, try to understand what Sumbul is saying. When you present a paper on any scholar, you should try and read at least all major works before presenting the
Okay.
paper, because more
Okay.
than creating understanding, you create misunderstanding about the writer. Ah.
Ma'am, I think I talk the emotional balance or emotional capacity of the woman is less in psychology said. Amina Wadud's not said about that. I mentioned Amina Wadud interpretation on the Fadullah concept. So
Okay.
I just misunderstand the question. I think my communication is misunderstand to that person. Sorry. Thank you.
Sumbul, if you want to add anything, you can very quickly. The chair may take over, please.
Thank you. Thank you, ma'am. So that was really a nice discussion we had. And as we know that this is an international conference going on and we are having multiple sessions, parallel sessions going on. And in this parallel session, this is 5A, we total have around 6 presenters. Like the first presenter, Ms. Khadija, who presented on the fiction work of Lala Abulel, and she very rightly focuses on the aspects of the two novels, the Minaret and the other one was the Kindness of Enemies, and she portrays how the female or the feminist workers or the feminist jurisprudence revolves around those novels. Moreover, the second speaker of the day, the Shiva Upadhyay, and he also focuses on the title of this study was the Islamic feminist perspectives in fiction with reference to the Raja Al Sena's Girls of Riyadh. So this he tried to he started with the flow of equity, dignity, the gender justice, and the equality the women are supposed to have. And again, he also focuses on the by having the character analysis of Michael and Gamraj, and he focuses on what the khadims and marriage realities or the emotional struggles the women particularly in the Saudi Arabia are facing with, and what is the reality check on those the feminist perspectives regarding those reality check of the women's right, the gender justice, and the misunderstandings whatsoever are prevailing. Particularly, the focus was only on for the area of the region of the Arab, and the character analysis was very perfectly being done by Mr. Shiva Upadhyay. Um, moving over to the third presenter, Dr. Arshi, she was more analyzed, and it was very beautifully. She tried to analyze the Banu Mushtaq work, the stories, the heart lamp, and she very perfectly tried to analyze that what are those stories of the real stories of the women who are being facing with the challenges of being struggling towards the to outcome the balancing rights they are facing with that patriarchy, and how the male are somehow not being able to provide the love, the kind of affection, and the kind of emotional balancing with those women, and moreover, the Islamic discourse on the Banu Mushtaq heart lamp, that was also discussed. The example she quoted about that Taj Mahal, and the love and the fantasies related to this, and how after 40 days the man get married to the another woman. That was also somehow like reflecting that how these stories reflect the women, reflect the identity or the women, and how the patriarchy or the masculinity is somehow not giving the perfection in the towards the female, and how what are the struggles those females are or the women are facing with. Moving over to the fourth presenter, Dia Fatima. She also talked about the contemporary reflections on the Islamic jurisprudence, gender and family law and transitions. So she somehow tried to focus on what are the families, what are the rituals, what are the customary laws, or what are the practices, how the women are being portrayed in a form of the set kind of a rule, and how they are being working over with those struggles, are working over with those patterns of the families, norms, laws, and what are those transitions they are facing with. Again, we had the Partha Roy and Najmi, who also focuses on the same theme of Banu Mushtaq work, and they also try to reveal out that what are those stories and how the women are being reflected in those stories. And we end up this session with Dr. Shuaib's work, and Dr. Shuaib discuss the diaspora, Muslim diaspora, and the women Muslims in like how that's brickland houses, South Asian women particularly, and the diasporas are being still a challenge, and how they are being working with that. And because he revealed that the paper is very vast, and he has just summarized it into the few like concluded or summarized it in a very short note. So it will be better when we'll have a time like he can submit the paper, and we can have a long thorough discussion on this, because it was just in a nutshell. So it will be better if we can have those all. Also, these six presenters, they presented their work very beautifully. What we can suggest, being a chair, that prepare a final draft of your paper, submit it to the convener, submit it to the chair, and we'll have a thorough understanding of the paper as suggested by the chair, as suggested by the chair of the session, Professor Nishad Zaidi, that whenever you are trying to focusing or presenting a paper on a particular theme, mentioning the person to whom you are working on, you need to understand thoroughly about his work, the major work. So this is a humble suggestion to every presenter or present over here. Although congratulations, you presented very well, but whenever after a few discourse of time, you all will be submitting your final manuscript. So before submitting, please go through thoroughly with the major works, try to incorporate the exact findings of the work, and try to have the critical understanding of the theme of the work, and prepare a perfect draft or your manuscript for the submission, so that that could be better understand and can be translated into edited volume or can be published in a good phrase. Thank you so much. I here end up the my talk. Thanks to the rapporteur, Mr. Sajid, Mr. Vabhav. Thanks to the chair. Thanks to all the presenters who were here. I think we don't have any other questions. There were only two questions, and the queries were being settled down. I think this is all over from my side. Thank you so much. Over to the chair. Over to the convener. Anything from your side?
Thank you, Dr. Ambreen, for your concluding remarks. I think with this, we end this technical session. We have also, I think, we are sticking to the time, and it's a humble request to all the participants again to please join us again on our other plenaries, valedictories that we have planned. There are two plenary sessions today. One is at 12:30 by Professor Roja Fazili, and another one is at 4:30 by Professor Asma Afsaruddin. So I would be very happy if you're all connected with us, throughout the day or at least in these main sessions. Thank you, everyone. I think with this we conclude. Thank you.
Yes, thank you. Thank you, Dr. Amina. Congratulations
Thank you,
once
everyone.
again for organizing this wonderful event. Thank you. Thanks to
Ma'am,
all.
can we move to vote of thanks?
Yes, yes,
Okay.
Kulsoom, please.
Okay. Coming to the vote of thanks, I extend my heartfelt gratitude to our Honorable Vice Chancellor, Professor Mazhar Asif, the chief patron for this conference. My sincere thanks to the registrar, Professor Mehtab Alam Rizvi, the patron of this event, for his guidance and cooperation. I also wish to thank our chair, Dr. Ambreen Jamali, and co-chair, Dr. Shujauddin, for their valuable insights and observations. My deep appreciation to our chairperson, Professor Nishaz Zedi, and convener, Dr. Amina Hussain, for the leadership and dedicated efforts in making this conference a success. Finally, my thanks to all the presenters and participants for their meaningful contributions. Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you, Kulsoom. Thanks to the presenters, thanks to the chair, and thanks to the convener. We know the convener is working very hard. All the best and best wishes for the next session. We
Thank
end
you
up
so
the
much.
session over here.
Also, we have the same link. This is the only link that will work for all the sessions. So you
Yes.
may leave and you may join back.
Okay. So at 12:30, we all will be meeting again for the next plenary session. We can have a break for 15 minutes and we'll join back. Bye. Take care.